Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Vanessa Marcotte. Vanessa Theresa Marcotte was born on June 17, 1989, in Leominster, Massachusetts, where she developed a strong academic foundation. She went on to graduate summa laude from Boston University in 2011, earning a bachelor's degree in communications. Following her graduation, she secured a job at WordStream, an online marketing software startup in Boston. Later, she advanced her career by becoming an account manager at Google's New York City office. Whenever possible, Vanessa would visit her mother and aunt in Princeton, a small rural town with a population of around 4,000, located in another state. As an only child, her mother Rosanna cherished these opportunities and looked forward to spending time with her daughter, who made it a point to visit every 2 months or so. On Sunday, August 7, 2016, at 1 p.m., Vanessa left her mother's house on Brook Station Road to go for a run and then take the commuter bus back to New York. She chose a familiar area for her run. When she failed to return after several hours, her mother contacted the police. The officers immediately started searching the area where Vanessa was supposed to have lost. Her mother, Rosanna, became concerned about Vanessa's unusual and prolonged absence, so she asked the police for help. This case gained significant national media attention because it was rare in Princeton, where no similar incident had occurred in the past 30 years. Furthermore, just a few days earlier, a similar incident involving 30-year-old Karina Vetrano, a runner and fitness blogger, had happened in a New York City neighborhood. At 8:20 p.m., a police dog traced a scent and led the search team to a densely vegetated area, about 60 yards from the road and less than a mile from Vanessa's mother's home. There, they found the body of a woman, quickly identified as Vanessa Marcotte. A preliminary examination of the body revealed that her death was a criminal act. She had been stripped of her clothes, and there were burn marks on her legs, hands, and face. The body was discovered in a secluded area, surrounded only by woods and a road, with no houses nearby. Notably, Vanessa's cell phone and headphones were missing, despite an extensive police search. It is believed that the perpetrator intentionally took these items to prevent leaving behind any DNA evidence. Next to the body, a sneaker with burn marks was found on the grass, and similar burn marks were discovered at other locations. Detectives deduced that the perpetrator used gasoline in an attempt to destroy DNA traces. A forensic examination revealed that Vanessa died from strangulation, and her fierce struggle for life led to the discovery of unknown DNA under her fingernails. The discovery that Vanessa's clothes had been removed clarified the motive behind the crime. Medical examiners detected signs of male involvement and analyzed DNA samples, but the results yielded no matches in either local or national databases. Authorities urged residents of Princeton and neighboring areas to remain vigilant and cautious, encouraging anyone with information or suspicions to contact the Massachusetts State Hotline or the Princeton Police Department. Worcester District Attorney Joseph Early Jr. announced at a press conference on August 11th that the perpetrator was likely a male who sustained minor injuries, including cuts, bruises, and scratches, during the struggle that resulted in Vanessa's death. The news of Vanessa's fate shocked not only her family and the people of Princeton, but also her colleagues. According to a Google spokesperson, Vanessa Marcotte was a highly valued member of the Google team at their New York office, where she had worked for the past year and a half. She was known for her constant smile, her dedication to volunteer work, and her love of Boston sports. Her Google colleagues were deeply shocked and saddened by her death, and their thoughts were with her family and friends. Her alma mater, Boston University, paid tribute to her, expressing their deepest condolences to her family and friends, and stating that they were in their thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. The question remains, who was responsible for Vanessa Marcotte's tragic death? Investigators believe that the person who took her life was either a local resident or a frequent visitor to Princeton, and was likely familiar with the area. Furthermore, detectives think that Vanessa did not know her killer and that their paths crossed by chance. While the investigation continued, law enforcement appealed to the public for assistance, setting up separate 24-hour phone lines for this purpose. A crucial eyewitness eventually came forward, reporting that they had seen Vanessa stop at a local convenience store to grab a drink of water after 1 p.m. on August 7th. At the time, she was seen walking and chatting on her cell phone. Based on this information, investigators believe that the attack on Vanessa likely occurred within the next 2 hours, between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Notably, her phone was switched off at 2:11 p.m. and has remained inactive ever since. Police officers thoroughly searched the area where the body was found and the surrounding vicinity, following up on numerous leads, but their efforts were initially unsuccessful. 3 months later, the police received new information about the case. A new witness came forward, stating that on August 7th, they saw a dark-colored Ford SUV parked on the curb near where Vanessa's body was found, with its hood up on 2 separate occasions. The first time, the witness drove past the SUV at around 12:45 p.m. and noticed the driver, a Hispanic-looking man between 25 and 35 years old, standing next to the vehicle and talking on the phone. The second time, the witness drove past the same location at approximately 2:05 p.m., and the SUV was still parked in the same spot, but its hood was down, and there was no one visible inside or near the vehicle. Authorities launched a search for a Hispanic man who owns a black SUV and reportedly lives near Princeton. 6 months after Vanessa's death, on February 23, 2017, Worcester County District Attorney Joseph Early Jr. disclosed additional investigation details. The DNA found on Vanessa's body was sent to a lab, and a profile was created based on DNA evidence and witness testimony. The suspect is believed to be a Hispanic male, 20 to 30 years old, with an athletic build, medium height, and short or shaved hair. He likely owns or had access to a dark-colored SUV on the day of the crime and had visible upper body injuries within days of the attack. About 3 weeks after Vanessa Marcotte's death, a police officer on patrol in Worcester County noticed a man who resembled the suspect. He was driving a vehicle that was identical to the one seen on the day of the incident. The officer rapidly jotted down the license plate number and, after tracing the car's ownership, the police team proceeded to the man's house. Angelo Colon Ortiz, a 31-year-old Puerto Rican native, had no prior criminal record. He was a married father of 3 who had lived in Worcester for less than a year, working as a third-party contractor for FedEx, making deliveries in the Princeton area. Despite his seemingly ordinary life, Ortiz had a disturbing side. According to his neighbors, he was known to make inappropriate, vulgar comments to people in the neighborhood, which led them to describe him as perverted. Additionally, a former Princeton postal worker alleged that Ortiz would often make crude, sexually explicit comments in Spanish about her and other women to his co-worker. When questioned by the police about Vanessa Marcotte, Ortiz claimed he didn't know her and couldn't remember being in Princeton on the day of the attack. Despite this, he agreed to provide a DNA sample, which subsequently matched the DNA found under Vanessa's fingernails. Ortiz was arrested and charged 3 days later. Prosecutors alleged that on the day of the crime, Ortiz purchased $5 worth of gasoline from a store 6 miles from the scene at 2:35 p.m., implying that Vanessa was likely already dead by then, and Ortiz had returned to try to destroy evidence. Ortiz's lawyers claimed that Ortiz did not fully grasp his rights because of a language barrier, and Ortiz himself said he was not aware that he had the right to refuse to provide a DNA sample. Following a long trial, the judge rejected the defense's request to exclude the DNA evidence from the case. Ortiz pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of second-degree murder and robbery. The Marcotte family accepted the plea deal to avoid a difficult and emotional trial. In October 2022, Angelo Colon Ortiz received a life sentence with a minimum term of 45 years before he becomes eligible for parole. In May 2020, amidst the warmth of spring, Grace Holland found herself engulfed in an inferno of despair. In a frantic and hysterical state, she clutched the cold steel of a gun, her reflection in the dim bathroom mirror mirroring the turmoil within her soul. The Holland family, paralyzed by fear, dared not reach out for help as the specter of Robert, Grace's husband, cast a long shadow over their tragedy. In June 2020, the nightmare intensified as Robert launched a brutal attack on Grace in the confines of their home. Ripping at her clothes and delivering vicious blows, he left behind a mosaic of bruises, silent testimony to his cruelty. Grace, trapped like a bird in a cage, yearned for escape, but found her efforts futile. Desperate, she documented the evidence of her suffering, capturing haunting images of her bruised body. In a moment of sheer desperation, she reached out to her mother, only to be met with Robert's chilling threats, dismissing her cries for help as madness. Each word uttered by Robert pierced through the heart of Grace's mother, a painful reminder of her daughter's torment. How much longer could Grace endure this living nightmare? How could she break free from the suffocating grip of this hellish existence? Grace's narrative transcends mere tragedy. It echoes the anguished plea of a soul trapped in despair, a desperate cry for aid amidst the engulfing darkness. Born on September 23, 1984, in the serene town of Creve, Missouri, Grace Holland was nurtured in the embrace of a loving and supportive family. Alongside her twin sister Laura and another sibling, she traversed the pathways of childhood, exploring, dreaming, and cherishing the bonds of kinship. Her education in a Catholic school instilled in her a sense of discipline, while her pursuit of a degree in criminal justice fueled her passion for upholding the principles of law and order. Grace's innate sense of purpose and responsibility guided her path, leading her to embrace a career dedicated to serving and safeguarding others. Following her graduation, Grace embarked on a journey marked by marriage and motherhood, the arrival of 4 children becoming the focal point of her existence. With boundless love and unwavering devotion, Grace embraced the role of motherhood, delighting in the opportunity to nurture and shape the lives of her offspring. Proudly sharing snapshots of her cherished children with all who crossed her path, she reveled in the joys of parenthood, cherishing each precious moment spent in their company. In 2015, Grace's life underwent a profound transformation when she crossed paths with Robert Deus, the esteemed head of the Maryland County Fire Department. His valiant profession and heroic demeanor immediately captured her attention, igniting a whirlwind of emotions between them. Grace was drawn to Robert's striking blend of bravery, intellect, and compassion, while he, in turn, was captivated by her beauty, intelligence, and unwavering kindness. Yet, behind Robert's impeccable facade lay the shadow of a tumultuous past. His brother David, a former St. Louis police officer, had been embroiled in a grave scandal in 1998, casting a pall over the family's reputation and irrevocably altering David's trajectory. Nearly 2 decades later, David's untimely demise left behind a trail of unanswered questions and concealed secrets, shrouding the family in further turmoil. Robert's narrative became intricately intertwined with the legacy of his brother David. David's influence as a respected law enforcement officer had not only shaped Robert's career, but also facilitated his ascent up the ranks of the profession. The echoes of David's past reverberated through Robert's present, underscoring the complexity of familial bonds and the enduring impact of past events on the trajectory of one's life. Alongside his duties in the fire department, Robert held the position of deputy president at Liberty Arts Works, a family-owned company specializing in crafting memorials for fallen military personnel, firefighters, and police officers. This endeavor, coupled with his active involvement in initiatives supporting first responder services through organizations like Backstoppers, significantly bolstered Robert's standing within professional circles. Although Robert had a child from his previous marriage, which didn't yield the desired happiness, he embarked on a new marital journey with Grace, a detective in the Maryland police force. This union not only enhanced his influence in law enforcement, but also symbolized a fresh start for both of them. With fervor, they set about building their shared future, investing in a new home that epitomized their unity. Yet, beneath the veneer of success, cracks began to emerge. Despite Robert's thriving career and seemingly idyllic personal life, the specter of his brother's past transgressions cast a shadow over his own reputation, raising doubts about his integrity. Moreover, undisclosed issues surfaced within his marriage to Grace, gradually unraveling the facade of their picture-perfect union. Laura, Grace's twin sister, offered insight into the tumultuous nature of their relationship, likening it to a roller coaster ride, marred by alternating bouts of tranquility and explosive arguments. According to Laura, Robert exerted undue control over Grace's life, dictating her actions and relationships, thereby straining their once promising bond. The dissolution of Grace's friendship, under Robert's influence, served as a poignant testament to the cracks forming in their relationship. Laura's revelation about Grace's severed friendship with her best friend, following a dinner attended by Robert, added another layer of mystery to the unraveling saga. The exact reason behind the breakup remained shrouded in ambiguity, deepening Grace's sense of isolation from her support network. According to Laura, Grace confided that Robert coerced her into resigning from her job and joining the family business. Despite the absence of official documentation regarding her employment, the family insisted that Robert compelled the company to provide financial support to Grace without formal records. This arrangement, fraught with opacity, exacerbated Grace's vulnerability. Amidst these tumultuous circumstances, Grace discovered she was pregnant with Robert's child. Rather than elation, this news intensified the strain on their relationship. Court records, presented by the Holland family during the trial, laid bare the stark contrast in their aspirations. While Grace expressed a desire to keep the child and salvage their relationship, Robert advocated for termination. Shockingly, court materials revealed Robert's offer to pay Grace $1,600 for an abortion, underscoring his eagerness to rid himself of paternal responsibilities. The summer of 2020 in Missouri bore witness to a tragedy that shook the community to its core: the untimely demise of 30-year-old Grace Holland. What began as a promising engagement with Robert Days Jr., the fire department chief, swiftly transformed into a harrowing loss, leaving an indelible scar on the hearts of her loved ones. The circumstances surrounding Grace's death, veiled in mystery, plunged her family and the St. Louis police into a realm of uncertainty. As official explanations remained elusive, skepticism flourished, fueled by the deafening silence from authorities. Grace's mother found herself unjustly under the weight of suspicion, fueling the family's resolve to unearth the truth. Initially, progress in the investigation languished, prompting the family to initiate legal action and unearth evidence independently. Grace Holland's case transcended state lines, capturing national attention as a pivotal moment demanding justice. On October 29, 2021, Laura Holland, Grace's sister, penned a poignant letter shared on the police department's Facebook page. In it, she recounted Grace's harrowing ordeal, haunted by the specter of Robert's erratic and aggressive conduct, as she desperately sought refuge from the Maryland Fire Department. On June 24, 2020, amidst the turmoil of their tumultuous relationship, Grace clandestinely recorded one of their heated arguments with her husband. This recording, later shared with Laura, served as damning evidence of their abusive dynamic. In the audio, Robert unleashed a torrent of insults at Grace, callously expressing his disdain for their union while hypocritically insisting on spending nights at their shared residence. He derided Grace, mocking her perceived idleness and contrasting it with his own toil. Despite Grace's feeble attempts to placate the raging tyrant and profess her love, her words only stoked Robert's fury. Ultimately, he abandoned her, leaving her to grapple with profound loneliness and soul-wrenching anguish. Then, on July 20th, a terse message from Robert pierced the silence. "I want you to leave me alone. I can't stand the thought of you sleeping in my house. I despise you." Yet, less than 24 hours later, on July 21st, a seemingly serene snapshot captured Grace and Robert lying together on the bed in their newly acquired home. Both wore smiles, with Grace seemingly striving to bury the strife of the previous night. Only 7 hours separated this moment of tranquil facade from an impending nightmare. In a cruel twist of fate, within that brief span, Grace Holland's delicate happiness would unravel into an irreversible tragedy. On July 23, 2020, a deceptive tranquility settled over Grace and Robert's tumultuous relationship. It was a deceptive calm before the storm, the ominous quiet before the thunder that would forever alter their lives. At 11:53 p.m., Robert Dios Jr., his voice trembling with anguish, dialed the emergency services. "My fiancée shot herself," he sobbed, his emotions uncontainable. In the ensuing moments, time seemed to slow to a crawl. The wail of ambulance sirens shattered the night silence as medics rushed into the house. There, they found Grace, lifeless. The clock struck 5:23 a.m., a time forever etched in the protocol as the moment of her passing. Her death, instantaneous, resulted from a gunshot wound to the head. The revelations of Grace Holland's autopsy, unveiled on September 17, 2020, sent shockwaves through those seeking answers. The report painted a stark picture. Grace had indeed shot herself, the bullet's trajectory deviating from the norm, prompting experts to question the official narrative. Yet, the Holland family contended that the investigation was cursory at best. During a brief exchange with detectives at the crime scene, Robert relayed that Grace, grappling with depression exacerbated by the recent loss of their child to miscarriage, succumbed to despair. Initially, Robert's account seemed plausible, but doubts lingered, casting a shadow over the veracity of his testimony. In the living room, Robert was when Grace emerged from the bedroom, seeking a hug, before retreating back into the room. Then, a gunshot pierced the air. Rushing to investigate, Robert found Grace lying in the bedroom, a gun nearby and blood pooling beneath her head. This account was promptly relayed to the medical examiner at 7:25 a.m. However, the Holland family contested this narrative. They alleged that on that very day, Robert, accompanied by his legal counsel, appeared at the Creve-C police station and offered a divergent version of events. In his new statement, Robert claimed that he and Grace were together in the bedroom. She briefly left and then returned to embrace him, mentioning she had to leave for work. As she leaned in to bid him goodbye, the fatal shot rang out. A press release dated January 31, 2024, delves into the enigmatic disappearance of the interview recording between Robert Dios and a detective from Creve-C. Jeffrey Hartman, the city's police chief, acknowledged the existence of the video interview during the investigation. However, he lamented an error in the department's recording system, resulting in the deletion of the crucial footage. This unfortunate turn of events left a veil of uncertainty shrouding the Creve-C Police Department's inquiry into Grace's untimely demise. On August 4, 2020, Detective Char Parker unveiled intriguing revelations. Parker, while tipping off Robert about the impending police visit for evidence collection, subtly suggested the necessity of emphasizing Grace's depression to shape a narrative that would point to an apparent outcome. Significantly, the police honed in on the contents of Robert's phone during their search. Ultimately, after thorough investigation, the detectives concluded that Grace had taken her own life, as per the forensic medical examination's testimony. However, the Holland family remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice. Convinced of Robert's culpability in Grace's demise, they were resolute in their determination to expose the truth. Opting for an alternative route, Grace's family made the decision to enlist the services of a private investigator for an impartial inquiry. They harbored profound reservations regarding the adequacy of the police investigation. Laura, Grace's grieving sister, vocalized her apprehensions regarding apparent irregularities in the investigation. In an online post, she meticulously outlined the evidence and facts that underpinned their belief that the investigation had veered off course. The Holland family voiced their profound disappointment with the police's handling of the case, alleging a glaring oversight in not considering Robert as a suspect, despite numerous indications pointing to his potential involvement. Moreover, they criticized the investigative team for failing to conduct essential tests, such as examining Grace and Robert's hands for gunpowder residue and analyzing Robert's clothing for further evidence. Adding to their frustration, the Holland family lamented the loss of several critical videos by the Crass Police Department, videos that could have illuminated Robert's role in the tragic incident. They expressed dissatisfaction with what they perceived as the Creve-C Police's bias against Robert. highlighting what they saw as a special treatment afforded to him. Notably, they pointed out Robert's lack of concern for Grace following her death, despite being in close proximity to her. Additionally, the family raised concerns about Robert's connections within the investigation circles, implying potential undue influence on the case's trajectory. They asserted that clear indicators of domestic violence had been disregarded, underscoring their frustration at the lack of response to their calls for a more comprehensive investigation. In 2023, the Holland family took their quest for justice to the courtroom, filing a lawsuit for death by negligence against Robert. They accused him of physical abuse and suggested that his actions either directly caused Grace's death or drove her to take her own life. However, Robert's lawyer staunchly defended his client's innocence, acknowledging certain circumstances but vehemently denying any involvement in Grace's tragic demise. He argued that the family's emotional turmoil might lead them to assign blame where there is none. In December 2023, Officer Hartman from the CVK Police Department sought assistance from the St. Louis County Police Department to reassess the case. The county police agreed, initiating a thorough examination of the details surrounding Grace's death. This renewed investigation gained momentum in January 2024 when police officers visited Robert Dow's residence to provide medical assistance to his new girlfriend, Dr. Sarah Sweeney. While initially classified as a sudden death, the incident remains under investigation, with detectives awaiting the results of a toxicological examination, which could take 4 to 6 weeks to complete. Dr. Sweeney revealed that she battled severe illnesses, including bone disease and allergies, leading to hospitalization in 2021. These conditions posed a risk of fatal anaphylactic shock without immediate treatment. However, Dr. Sweeney always carried an adrenaline shot for emergencies and diligently managed her health, as per her mother. The family opted to await the official autopsy findings before forming any conclusions. In the eyes of the law, Robert Deus remains a suspect, despite the absence of charges in the deaths of Holland and Sweeney. However, the official results of Dr. Sweeney's autopsy could significantly impact the investigation into Grace Holland's case. Following a meticulous reevaluation, the St. Louis County Police discarded the hypothesis that Grace took her own life. The investigation findings were forwarded to the prosecutor's office in early December via the Public Information Department, which subsequently notified Fox News. Presently, the case is classified as death by negligence, though it remains open for potential further action by the prosecutor's office. Chief Jeffrey Hartman of the Creve Court Police affirmed their adherence to the initial conclusion despite lingering doubts and public scrutiny. Nevertheless, the Holland and Sweeney families persist in their quest for closure, eagerly awaiting the autopsy and toxicology results. They are determined to unravel the enigma surrounding Grace Holland's demise, pondering whether it was merely an unfortunate accident or if there lurks something more sinister and obscure beneath the surface of this narrative. Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to review with you another horrible case. The case of Tina Watson. Admitting to one's parents the decision to plan a wedding brings a mix of excitement and nerves. Such was the case with Tina Thomas, who felt significantly more anxious than her fiancé, Gabe Watson. Both Tina and Gabe were 26 years old at the time. Unlike Gabe, this marked Tina's third serious relationship and her second attempt at getting married. Her first attempt to build a family with boyfriend Scott McCulloch ended unsuccessfully. The failure wasn't due to any issues between Tina and Scott, but stemmed from Tina's mother's disapproval. She harbored an instant dislike for Scott, not based on specific grievances, but out of a desire for her daughter's happiness and well-being. At that point in her life, Tina herself was quite young, which played a role in their eventual separation. The dream of a shared future quickly faded away. Tina's second relationship with Stan Marks also did not endure. The couple simply couldn't overcome their 3-year relationship crisis and mutually decided to part ways. On Christmas Eve during a friend's party, Tina met Gabe Watson. Their connection wasn't instantaneous love, but was built on mutual support in recovering from recent breakups. It led to Gabe proposing marriage after 2 years together. Having been previously disheartened by past experiences, Tina agreed, but insisted she couldn't proceed without her parents' blessing. In 2003, determined to follow traditional protocols sincerely like a proper gentleman, Gabe chose Valentine's Day to ask for permission beautifully and romantically from her parents. Unfortunately, Tina's father was unavailable that day, so they rescheduled their dinner to February 15th. During this dinner, as Gabe declared his intent to spend his life with Tina forever hand in hand, he faced an unexpected challenge when the father of the bride asked if he truly loved Tina. In response, Gabe found himself stammering like a schoolboy, but didn't provide an answer immediately, a hesitation interpreted by Tina's father as mere shyness among strangers. Turning then to his daughter with the same question brought another surprise. Instead of directly confirming her feelings for Gabe outright, she began expressing fears about loneliness. At the age of 26, the father considered for a moment and blessed the young couple. Preparing for a wedding takes considerable time and effort. While Tina was busy contemplating her attire, guests, and the entire event, Gabe focused solely on the honeymoon. He had no interest in how his future wife wished to spend their vacation. He had already made all the plans. Gabe's idea was to visit the Great Barrier Reef in the Pacific Ocean near Australia and go diving there. His primary aim was to explore the sunken ship, the Townsville Titanic, which sank back in 1911. The issue was that Tina, unlike Gabe, did not enjoy diving. Yes, he sometimes took her scuba diving in a pool with calm water under lifeguard supervision, but that was it. Gabe himself was an experienced scuba diver who had completed a rescue diving course and had over 50 dives to his credit at that time. Naturally, these were not in a pool. Tina had no choice. The first instructor Tina had lessons with was disappointed in her skills and even warned Gabe that she absolutely lacked the competence for open ocean swimming. A furious Gabe ignored this advice, blaming the instructor for being incapable of proper teaching. On October 11th, the young couple finally married. 2 days later, Tina and Gabe flew to Australia on a $10,000 trip funded by wedding gifts. They walked around Sydney and visited both the Sydney Aquarium and Zoo. While Tina enjoyed these activities immensely, she grew increasingly somber as their journey towards the Great Barrier Reef approached. On the morning of October 21st, they flew to Townsville. That evening, they boarded a boat heading to one of the most stunning places on Earth, a diver's paradise. As time passed, employees of the diving company would recount that, in truth, the couple did not seem like seasoned divers. Gabe, despite having completed courses and possessing some experience, struggled with the equipment as if it were his first encounter. Yet, he was the one who helped Tina pass her diving exam, a test that should have been conducted separately. When the instructor offered Tina assistance underwater, she declined it. The dive log also recorded that there was a strong current that day, an essential detail that shouldn't be overlooked. Gabe assisted his wife in figuring out the gear they had purchased back in the US. Gabe chose an 11-liter tank for himself and provided Tina with an 8.5-liter tank. This was dangerous given Tina's limited experience. Initially, descending to the Townsville Titanic was unsuccessful. Tina requested additional weight since she couldn't reach depth, and Gabe's underwater computer wasn't functioning properly at first. It had to calculate necessary speeds for diving and ascent, as well as display oxygen levels in their cylinders. Once back on the boat, the computer began working again, enabling them to attempt another descent. The wreck rested 49 feet below. Tina was the first to delve with Gabe following behind her. According to Gabe's talk, everything was fine initially until Tina suddenly stopped and signaled indicating she wanted to ascend. Recognizing her panic immediately, a common reaction for her, he decided to keep them at their current depth to help her acclimate psychologically. During this period, she continued deep breathing excessively, an unsafe practice under such conditions, and Gabe noticed she began sinking. He attempted to grab her belt, but inadvertently knocked his own mask off in the process due to her vigorous movements. While readjusting his mask, which didn't take long, he found Tina already too far away from him. Instead of trying to get closer to Tina, he decides to surface to seek help from lifeguards on board. On his way up, he encountered another swimmer who ignored his signs for assistance. Later, when the police conducted underwater computer readings, they confirmed that Gabe did indeed try to swim after his drowning wife briefly. He, however, gave up the attempt rather quickly. The ascent to the surface itself wasn't rushed. On the contrary, Gabe surfaced as instructed, stopping at each required depth level. When questioned by police, other divers claimed that Gabe could have saved his wife but chose not to. This unfortunate incident occurred at the very beginning of their dive, so Gabe should have had sufficient oxygen in his tanks to swim down and return to the surface. The rescuers on duty aboard the ship immediately went in search of Tina once they realized what had happened. They found her quickly, but sadly, it was too late. Tina was lying on her back, with her eyes open under her mask at a depth of 82 feet. Her body was promptly lifted up, and on the yacht's deck, they performed artificial respiration for about 40 minutes, unfortunately, to no avail. Tina passed away. Throughout this entire time, Gabe did not go near his wife, but stood somewhere aside and reportedly sniffled naively, according to witnesses. Employees of the company claimed that on the way to shore, he smiled and even played cards with other passengers. Gabe denied these actions in court. A subsequent autopsy of Tina revealed complexities. While there were no signs of an obvious violent death, bruises were present on her neck and traces of blood were observed in her nostrils, a common occurrence at the 82-foot depth where Tina's body was discovered. There were no traces of alcohol in her blood, but high levels of drugs such as ibuprofen and paracetamol were detected. These medications are often used to treat seasickness. A small amount of fluid was found in her lungs. The report concluded that Tina drowned, but suggested it's possible she drowned while already deprived of oxygen. Her equipment was checked by the Australian Water Police and showed no malfunctions. Despite this, one could argue that an inexperienced diver may have ignored safety rules, resulting in a tragic accident. The autopsy results were rather ambiguous. Additionally, the diving team observed Watson's strange behavior, which didn't fit the conventional image of a grieving husband. The investigation continued for a considerable time. Gabe realized the detectives were focusing on him. Furthermore, Tina's parents refused to accept the incident as an accident. They wanted son-in-law in court, not necessarily as a murderer, but at least as someone who failed to help. During his first interrogation, the police noted that Gabe was in shock. He oscillated between crying and laughing, twitching nervously, and repeatedly asking to call his father due to ear pain. Gabe begged his father to inform Tina's parents about the tragedy. Late that night, Gabe was released and returned to the yacht belonging to the dive company. He requested lodging for the night, arguing that their trip had been cut short because of Tina's death. They'd only been there for 24 hours instead of 2 days. He also asked for a refund of half the dive cost since he hadn't visited the sunken ship. On October 24th, Gabe's mother flew to Townsville to support her son and help him find legal representation. At Gabe's request that same day, they visited the morgue so he could see his wife one last time. Since Gabe was still a suspect, a morgue employee contacted Detective Lawrence, who oversaw the case. In theory, Gabe could have tampered with evidence during this visit. However, he merely cried and held his wife's cold hand while begging for her forgiveness. Unbeknownst to him, Detective Lawrence recorded this moment from outside the door. At some point during this interaction, Gabe uttered, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Detective Lawrence would later use these words against him in court. "Then at the morgue, you told Tina you didn't mean to hurt her. What did you mean by that?" In Oakland, he sought medical attention on the airport grounds and was held there for checking. According to the investigation, this was done deliberately to avoid seeing Tina's father. Tina's funeral took on November 5th. Gabe still had to with the deceased's father. Almost in full view of everyone, Gabe removed his wife's wedding ring, placing it on his ring finger over hers. He also took off her earrings and immediately handed them over to his father-in-law. From that day, Watson and the Thomas family never crossed paths again. Later, during the trial, Gabe was asked if he had really taken his wife's jewelry off during the funeral. Gabe simply smiled and shrugged. Many had different opinions about him later on. Some described Gabe as a chubby, funny man who was kind. Others called him a tyrant and desperate. Tina's friends confirmed what she'd told her father at a family dinner on February 15th. Her union with Gabe was simply a way to avoid dying alone. This fear led Tina to die on the seabed. Moreover, before their honeymoon, Tina confided to a friend that her husband had dragged her by the hand to an insurance company where he forced her to insure his life at a higher interest rate in case of death and listed himself as the beneficiary. This testimony was verified by the insurance agent who corroborated everything. The cab driver who drove the newlyweds to the yacht was also questioned. He revealed Tina cried the entire way while her husband paid no attention. Finally, Tina's friend Amanda Phillips shared another story that shed light on what their relationship. Gabe had once videotaped Tina in the bathroom without her consent and edited it into a tape of them celebrating Christmas. He played this tape during a general viewing with many guests present and laughed loudly while everyone else felt uncomfortable and tried to explain that it was highly inappropriate. During the 2008 trial, the jury viewed intensely disturbing footage of Watson at Tina's grave. He was seen taking all the flowers and discarding them in a nearby trash can. Tina's father noticed the flowers were missing and set up a hidden camera to catch the thief. To his shock, it was Gabe on the tape, which outraged him deeply. In court, Gabe's defense claimed that he and his wife had discussed death during an honeymoon. Allegedly, he said that she requested no flowers on her grave, a statement that seemed unusual and unlikely. The search for evidence could have lasted longer if the police hadn't replicated the incident by wearing similar gear that Gabe and Tina used. Gabe mentioned that Tina drowned while he tried to put a mask on her face underwater. It turned out it was not feasible to put the mask on by oneself without an additional air source, in this instance, Tina's oxygen. In late November 2008, Australian police arrested Gabe. On June 5, 2009, his trial began where he pleaded guilty, but only to failing to save his wife, leading to a charge of negligent homicide and an 18-month prison sentence. After serving his time, Gabe returned to the U.S., but about a year later, he faced charges of first-degree murder from an American court. The alleged motive was to obtain insurance payouts after his wife's death. Gabe's lawyer attempted to shift blame onto the diving company, arguing that its employees failed to ensure tourist safety and were now trying to deflect responsibility onto an already punished husband, fearing license loss for their business. Regarding the insurance payout received following Tina's unfortunate demise, the amount totaled $33,000. Gabe, however, expended considerably more on legal fees and additional expert consultations. Despite this, the prosecution maintained that such spending stemmed from the husband's concern about not being believed. The prosecutor also contested Gabe's claim that despite holding a degree in drowning rescue, he was unable to save his wife. When Gabe had an opportunity to address the jury, he remarked on the situation. He said it had been 7 years since the tragic event, and not a day had passed without him reflecting on that terrible day. The public had openly accused him of his wife's death, labeling him a murderer. No individual had acknowledged his suffering or expressed understanding of his pain. Rather, they all seemed to desire his demise. He stated that only his late wife's parents could be understood in their perpetual inability to forgive him, regardless of any gestures or pleas for forgiveness. He pointed out that while it is common to hear people comment on how unimaginable losing a child is, no one ever expresses understanding of what it's like to lose a spouse. particularly during their honeymoon. If he were to be criticized for anything, it would be for not making sufficient efforts to save Tina. However, he mentioned he felt he had already faced his punishment for that failure. Perhaps some would have been satisfied if he had drowned alongside his wife 7 years ago. Nonetheless, he confessed his fear of dying, and his desire to live persisted then just as it does now. In conclusion, no evidence was presented in court proving Gabe's guilt. Consequently, the jury found Gabe not guilty.